Okay, so we're learning the Maimer, Podah Bsholom, Tav Shin, Lamed Tes. We started the Maimer in last year, and in last year we learned that there's three madrigas there's two madrigas in Shalom. There's one madriga of Milchama, of Krav, of war, and there's two madrigas in Shalom. The first madriga in war is when the Nefesh Elokis tries to influence and work with the Nefesh Ba'amis, with his understanding, with his seichel. And since he's lowering himself to the world of the Nefesh Ba'amis, so therefore you end up in a situation of a war. Because the Nefesh Ba'amis has his own seichel, B'chlal, the Nefesh Elokis is only coming with a keich of seichel in the first place. In the Ha'ara, Rebbe points out that it's two separate points, in Ha'ara 27. So Bechlal Seichel is open to Shakla Vitaria, to back and forth. But in addition to that, the Nefesh Elokis, and that's what in the Pnim of the Maimer says, that the Nefesh Elokis has to go down to the level of the Seichel of the Nefesh Ba'amis. So that's a situation of war. Then we have a situation of Shalom. Yeah.
We take it over without anything.
Without anything. That's Mamish, the Mashiach
That's
Shalom.
that's a Shalom.
Shalom on the level of Mashiach.
Yeah, they just walk away from the tanks, and that's it. They just leave. They just left.
Yeah.
No fight. That's the second. That's the second level.
That's the second level.
There's Gaza, and there's Hezbollah, and then there's Syria.
And in Gaza, since the Yidden are doing the fighting, so they're coming with the Shakla Bataria. They're coming with Seichel.
Exactly.
That's the problem.
And we're going into the tunnels. We're going into
instead of just
we're talking
destroying
them.
Yeah, flatten it all. But in Syria, it's not the Yidden doing the fighting, so it goes in the
say by Lebanon, they were fighting. They were like dropping bombs. I'm saying, but like getting rid of them. Like, but here they didn't even have to.
They didn't have, yeah. It's unbelievable. If you think about it, the Gedel Hanes, when Israel makes plans, they're going to make a very daring attack. What are they going to do? They're going to attack those two missile sites, or they're going to send their soldiers into one town and try to clean up the terrorists. Yeah, what are they doing in Lebanon? They're attacking a few missile sites and sending in to 7, 8, 9 towns to clear it up from terrorists. And we're an entire country. Just disappeared. And the Iranians called it the Golden Link in the Ring of Fire. Syria is really what made Iran an empire.
The Kippur War, the Syrians were the worst.
Yeah.
They were the most vicious.
I'm going to a shir later, Rabbi Zirkin. He's going to discuss.
He was in there. I said he saw what happened. It was very similar to October 7th.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Let's get back to the Maimer. So you have over here the Nefesh Elokis comes with its ratzon. Yeah. The second level, and this is already a level of Shalom, is when the Nefesh Elokis says, "Mitzad my take it ratzon," since the Nefesh Elokis has this awesome force of connection to the Eibishter, so it doesn't want anything else. It's not interested in anything else. And when this becomes revealed and it becomes felt by the Nefesh Ba'amis, so the Nefesh Ba'amis just walks away. It has no ability to express its own desires and taivas and averis, for sure not in anything of Elam Hazim. Okay, but in this level, the Nefesh Ba'amis still exists, and his taivas still exists. It's just that because of the great force of the Nefesh Elokis, so it can't act. It doesn't try.
It's going to be.
He's going to lose. He's going to lose, but he's still there. So that's not Shalom. It's Shalom in the sense that there's no battle, there's no active fighting going on. But it's not Shalom in the sense that there's still an enemy. The enemy is quiet right now. He's afraid to lift his head, but he's there. So it's not Shalom.
The Mishma works.
The what?
The protectors. The Nefesh Elokis has.
Keeps a gun on each window. Like that's the commander in Gaza. Like there's a whole building standing over there. He's like, how are we just standing over here? He says, I have a gun on each window. Would have been better if they took the building down. But the Nefesh Elokis silences the Nefesh Ba'amis entirely. So that's already the second level of the Nefesh Elokis working with the Nefesh Ba'amis. And over there, you already have a situation of what seems to be Shalom, but he says really it's not Shalom. Really, it's Muhammad. Okay. The final level is when the Nefesh Elokis comes with the power of its Yechidah. When it says that I have a place within me, which is called Yechidah, which is the Nekudas Pnimiyus Halev, which is the innermost and the truest and the essence of my heart, which is something that's just connected to the Eibishter, and it knows of nothing else. And when the Nefesh Elokis comes and says, "This is who I am," when the Yid comes and says, "This is who I am," so the Nefesh Abamis becomes bottle automatically, becomes completely bottle. It's like it doesn't exist. Okay, that's Bekitzer what we. This is what. Um, the close you would have to say it's the Darga of a tzaddik. But we're going to see that this type of avodah is something actually that every Yid could do. We're going to see in the end of the Maimer that this is actually something that every Yid could do. So we'll get to it. Okay. So now we're going to continue, and the Rebbe is going to talk over here two madregas, where we're going to bring out a deeper point in Shalom. Okay. So far, the point in Shalom is in how much do we get rid of the Nefesh Abamis. And in Dalid, the Rebbe is going to talk a deeper Inyan in Shalom. And in Hey, the Rebbe is going to talk even a deeper Inyan in Shalom. And with that, we'll be able to answer the question of the Maimer. So let's start Dalid. And the Rebbe connects these nekudas of the different levels of the Nefesh Elokis finding the Nefesh Abamis with this that it says, B'negeh to Mesiras Nefesh, that every single Yid has the Kecha Mesiras Nefesh Mitzad Yechida, which Mesiras Nefesh comes from the level of Yechida. So what does it say about Mesiras Nefesh? This that a Yid gives his life in order that he shouldn't be separated from the oneness of the Eibishter is not because that's what he wants to do. That it's possible that it should be that he doesn't give his life and that he does become separate from the Eibishter, but he decides that he's going to be connected to the Eibishter. Ella, rather, it's a different word over here. Because he can't, it's impossible for him to be separate from the Eibishter. What did they ever say over here? When you're looking at Mesiras Nefesh, he says you can have a person who decides that he wants to go on Mesiras Nefesh. Yeah. If he decided that he wants to go on Mesiras Nefesh, so it means that it was possible for him to be separated from the Eibishter. In his level, he was able to be separated from the Eibishter. It's just that technically he made a decision that he's not going to be separate from the Eibishter. That's not the word of Mesiras Nefesh. The word of Mesiras Nefesh is that it's impossible for a Yid to be separate from the Eibishter. And we're going to see, the Rebbe is going to explain it, is going to expand on this in a moment. So we'll see it inside, and then we'll talk maybe a little illustration of that point. According to this, we could explain what's explained in several places, that the Ava of B'chol Ma'edcha, that's the idea of Mesiras Nefesh. The three levels before that we described of the Nefesh Elokis working with the Nefesh Abamis, which are the level of Naran, which is the Tam V'das, the Seichel of the Nefesh Elokis working with the Nefesh Abamis. That's the Ava of B'chol Levavcha. And then the level of Ratzin, which is the Makif of Chaya, working with the Nefesh Abamis. That's the level of B'chol Nafshecha. That's said in the pasuk B'chol Levavcha, B'chol Nafshecha, B'chol Ma'edcha. And then the level of Yechida that's in the Neshama. That's the Ava of B'chol Ma'edcha. Okay, that was the three levels that we discussed in the introduction, correspond to these three types of Avas described in the pasuk. So he says that Mesiras Nefesh comes dafka from the third level, from the level of B'chol Ma'edcha. The L'chura ain't moving. Seemingly it's not understood, but even the lower levels of Ava that the Neshama has to the Eibishter, the levels of B'chol Levavcha, B'chol Nafshecha, L'chura should require and make the person go on Mesiras Nefesh. When a person loves the Eibishter with his entire heart, and certainly when his love to the Eibishter is with his whole soul, he's certainly going to give his life to the Eibishter because of this love that he has in his heart. And what's the chiddush? And what's the novelty? What's so special about the Ava B'chol Ma'edcha that we say, Dafka over here, you have Mesiras Nefesh? Okay, so the Rebbe's question is very simple. You see by people that when they love something tremendously, they'll sacrifice everything for it. Yeah. One of the places where you see this, for example, in artists, a poet, an artist, a musician, and the ones who are, it's not just that it's their job. They're truly nafshiistic, and they feel it inside. They will suffer for years and not take a different job and write poetry and be rejected by different publishers and not have what to eat and not be able to live in a comfortable house and struggle. Yeah, this is the struggling artist. Um, until finally, eventually, somebody picks up their book, and then if they have a few protests, usually they become famous after they die. That's usually the seder. They die as a pauper. Yeah, the artist dies as a pauper, and then his art is, uh, and then the art is sold for $100 million at auction. That's usually the seder. So you see that by somebody who has a tremendous love for something, he'll give his life for it. You see it for Pearl Mamash. He gives his life for it. So why do we say that even if the person is filled with the Ava of B'chol Levavcha, which is the Ava Pitam V'das Al Piseichel, and even if he's beyond that, he's filled with the Ava of B'chol Nafshecha, where it comes from the depths of his soul, Nishtas is Mesiris Nefesh. It's not enough yet. Dafke B'chol Ma'edcha Yechid is Mesiris Nefesh. A person could give his life to the Eibster even with the love of B'chol Levavcha, and even with the love of B'chol Nafshecha. So the Rebbe says like this. Va'bir b'zeh shemesiris nefesh shemitzad ha'avada b'chol levavcha b'chol nafshecha yi ba'efen shereitza limser nafshe abur havaya. When a person has mesiris nefesh mitzad his ava b'chol levavcha, because he understands the greatness of the Eibishter, and he understands how nothing in the world is bichlal in the same area. It can compare to the greatness of the Eibishter, and therefore he's willing to give up on the entire world and all of its pleasures and all of its goodness for the Eibishter, who's much greater than that. And even when the Ava is b'chol nafshecha, when the Ava is because of his chaya, because of the teikef haratzin, because that's what his nefesh elokis wants to do. So what's pshat over here? So it comes out that the cheshbon is that he wants to give his life for the Eibishter. The Ava de B'chol Levavcha Neran, not in Shal Pitam V'das, and the Ava of B'chol Levavcha, which comes from the level of Neran in the Neshama, it's a ratzin that's according to his understanding. U'ba'ava de B'chol Nafshecha Chai ratzin Shalamayla Mitan, and in the Ava of B'chol Nafshecha, which comes from the Medega of Chai, it's a ratzin that's higher than Tam. Masha'enkin the Mesiris Nefesh Mitzad Ava de B'chol Ma'idcha, Masha'enkin the Mesiris Nefesh that comes inside the Ava of B'chol Ma'idcha, which this is from the level of Yechida. He ba'efin she'ena yochel liyasnifet chas v'shalom, that it's impossible for him to be separated from the Eibishter. You see it with Podah. Not even with the Ratzin. He's gonna finish the point in a moment in the next two lines. But you see Podah Mamish by Yidden. The Alter Rebbe mentions this in Tanya. What's the greatness of the Mesiris Nefesh of Yidden? You see people in other religions who were killed for their dedication to their religion, that they didn't want to accept the religion of the new government, and they allowed themselves to be killed. So what's the greatness of the Mesiris Nefesh of a Yid? So he points out that by the Mesiris Nefesh of a Yid, there's no understanding over here. It's not shot that the Yid makes a cheshbon. What does he understand? And he thinks about it, and then he understands what needs to be, and he decides to go on Mesiris Nefesh. It's also not shot that the Yid is aware of all the greatness of his neshama and the greatness of the Gan Eden that his neshama is going to be in. But you see that even Yidden who had nothing to do to Yiddishkeit grew up in an environment where they were born to a not-from family, and they lived their entire life with nothing, no knowledge. They don't understand what's Gan Eden, they don't understand what's a neshama. They don't know what they're missing, what they're going to miss. They know nothing. And when they're forced to go on Mesiris Nefesh without even a thought, they just give their life for the Eibishter. Where does such a thing come from? So this Nekuda comes from the fact that it's impossible. It's not, if it was something that I know, so I have to know something. If it's impossible for me to become separate from the Eibishter, so then it doesn't matter if the Yid is the greatest tzaddik, or if there's a Yid who has no involvement in Yiddishkeit, and no knowledge of Yiddishkeit, and no awareness of Yiddishkeit. He'll go on Mesiris Nefesh just the same. And even a higher madrega. Because he doesn't have the thoughts of Schar and Gan Eden mixed into his Mesiris Nefesh. So that's the idea of Yechida. And that's the idea of the Mesiris Nefesh that comes from Yechida. And this is why Mesiris Nefesh, we say, is Rafk and Ava of B'chol Ma'idcha, Ki Mesiris Nefesh, and here's the key to understanding it, Hu Inin HaBittul. Thus is Pshat Mesiris Nefesh, Mesiris Nefesh is Pshat Bittul. It's not Pshat. Yeah, Lahavdil, maybe we'll mention it. Yeah, Lahavdil, Yavach Islam, the suicide bombers. Yeah, will go and kill themselves. Why do they do it? Because they're promised all of the great rewards that they're going to get in Gan Eden. So this person gave his life. Bechitzenius, what does it look like? It looks like the same thing like Mesiras Nefesh. He gave his life. But what's Mesiras Nefesh? Mesiras Nefesh isn't a technical thing that the person dies. Mesiras Nefesh is pshat that he's completely bottled to the Eibishter. He has nothing of his own. There's only Eibishter. If Mesiras Nefesh is pshat bittul, so then just dying is not enough. Dying is not enough. The question is, why did you die? Yeah, why did he die? Why did the person die? If he died because of his tam v'das, so that's b'chlal garnish. If he died because of his ratzin, is maybe a little bit higher. Because of his neshama, is maybe a little bit higher. In other words, if he died, if he went to Mesiras Nefesh, gave his life because of what he understood that this is the right thing to do, so that's on a very low superficial level of the person. It involves his yeshus a lot. If you're going to look at it as far as bittul, there's a lot missing, because the person with his whole mitzias, with his whole yeshus, went on Mesiras Nefesh. If the person went on Mesiras Nefesh mitzad his nefesh, so over there it's already on a little bit of a more bittul dekaifin. He wasn't necessarily doing it because that's what he thinks, that's what he understands, but there's something deeper within him that's making him go on Mesiras Nefesh. Mashenkin in the level of chaya, where it's not mitzad the person itself. It's not mitzad his mitzias. It's not mitzad the person. Ela mitzad the elikus. He's going on Mesiras Nefesh mitzad the Eibishter. That mitzad the Eibishter, it's impossible for me to be separated chas v'shalom from him. So it's complete bittul, and that's pshat Mesiras Nefesh. It's not only giving your life. It's really b'pnimius about being bottled to the Eibishter, and being bottled to the Eibishter means when it has nothing to do to me.
That's the highest. No?
That's not. He doesn't say over here that's the highest. He says that's the only. The other ones don't qualify as bittul, as Mesiras Nefesh really. Look, he'll get the reward and we'll give him credit, etc. He's part of the. He's considered a kaddish v'chulu v'chulu, but it's not really. This is not what we mean when we say Mesiras Nefesh. Mesiras Nefesh means when it's done for the Eibishter, when it's done for me, for my benefit, because of my understanding, because of my mitzias. It's not Mesiras Nefesh. I'm doing what I think is the best thing to do. When it's Mesiras Nefesh, it's pshat that it's all for the Eibishter, and that's why Mesiras Nefesh is only by the Ava B'chol Meidcha from Yechida. Yeah, we're on the last line of the first page, and we're going to turn the page in a moment. That the bittul of the Ritzeinei Zarim that we learned in last week's shir, that when does a person deal with and completely nullify the foreign desires of the Nefesh Ba'amis to things that are foreign to the Eibishter, that's Tafke and the Ava of B'chol Ma'idcha. And over here now, he gives a much deeper reason over here, and a much deeper explanation of what's really going on over here. When the person is experiencing Ava of B'chol Avavcha, mitzad his understanding, mitzad his naran, or B'chol Nafshecha, and mitzad his ratzin, mitzad his will, that comes from the level of Chaya, Mikivin, mitzad Avazu, Yeshev Sharus, Shalei Limser Nafshei. There's a possibility that he won't give his life to the Eibishter. He does. He could go this way, or he could go that way. If he could go this way, or he could go that way, so it means that there's something else involved in the story over here. And what's that something else that's left in the story? The Lumazah is still here. If it could be this way or that way, it means that it's not only the Eibishter. If we're in a space, if we're in a condition, in a situation where there's only Eibishter, so it's not that there could be Mesiras Nefesh, there can't be Mesiras Nefesh. The only path, the only option, the only possibility is Mesiras Nefesh. So the Ava B'chol Avcha B'chol Nafshecha, where the person says, I have to make a decision. Am I going to go to the side of the Lumazah, or I'm going to go to the side of Kedusha? So even if he goes on Mesiras Nefesh, but there was still something of the Lumazah left in his state where he's holding. There's still a Metzias of Lumazah left. When are you completely mevatel the Lumazah? While through the Ava of B'chol Meidcha, mitzad Ava Zum, it's impossible for it to be in any other way other than giving his life for the Eibishter. It's a
So
little.
it's not that you're giving your life. There's no other. Without that, I'm nothing.
So, there is nothing. Not
There is
not
nothing.
without that, I'm
No,
nothing.
There is nothing.
There is nothing. Without that, I'm nothing is saying Shema Cheshbon.
There is nothing.
There is nothing. So to bring out the difference between what we learned last week and what David just says over here, it's a little bit of an edela point. But based on what we learned last week, the story was always, why are we having different levels of shalom or different distances from shalom? In the case of Tam Vadas, we're completely far from shalom, and then in the case of Ratzon, we're a little closer, and finally by Yechidah we get to shalom. What's pshat? What's happening? The question is, how much are we getting rid of the lumas? In the case of Tam Vadas, in the case of B'chol Vavcha, we got rid of the lumas a little bit, and when we got rid of the lumas by the level of Ratzon, of the nesham, of the nefesh, so now we got rid of more of the lumas. And that's where that's pshat, being closer to shalom. What does it mean to be closer to shalom? It means to get rid of the lu'umazeh more. And by the level of yechidah, what does it mean to get closer to shalom? It means to get rid of the lu'umazeh entirely, completely bimevatel the lu'umazeh. Over here, according to the explanation that Deb is giving over here, it's a different story. Was is pshat shalom? Shalom is, the question is, where's your nefesh elikis holding? If your nefesh elikis is holding only by the ava of Tam Vadas, so then you're going to have a situation of milchama. If your nefesh elikis is holding on a higher level by the ava of Ratzon, so then you're not going to have a milchama b'peil mamish, but the lumas is still going to be left. If you're holding by the ava of Yechidah, so then there's not going to be any lumas. In other words, what he's showing is a greater depth in shalom. That shalom isn't only the lack of a nefesh b'amis. It's not only about getting rid of a lumas. It's actually about on what level is the neshama holding. When the neshama is holding on the level of Yechidah, so then you have shalom. So that if we want to reach shalom, if we want to say that there's an aveda of shalom and there's a situation of shalom, what does it mean? You can't only say, oh, I got rid of the klippus this much, I got rid of the nefesh b'amis this much. You have to call out and you have to bring out a deeper level in the neshama, and then you have shalom. Okay, that's the difference between what we learned last week, where it was a story of getting rid of klippus, versus this week it's a story of bringing out deeper keiches in the nefesh elikis. Okay, that's Dalet. And now in Hey, there is Meisif another depth in the idea of shalom, and based on this Heisafa, we'll finally be able to answer the first question of the Maimer, which is, if it's a situation of shalom, so then how do you have a p'tiyah? Why do you need a p'tiyah? Right?
Yeah.
A p'tiyah. If there's shalom, if there's peace, Podah Bsholom nafshi. So why do you, if there's shalom, if there's peace, why do you have to be redeemed? And especially if there's krav. The pasuk is Podah Bsholom nafshi mikravli. There's a situation of war, so how could you call that shalom? That was the question in the beginning of the Maimer. So we're working our way towards the answer. We're going backwards a little bit in the explanation that we see in the Mittler Rebbe's Maimer, that milchama is dafka when the nefesh elikis is melubish in the guf and the nefesh b'amis, and this was according to what Deb is saying over here, really, that I was explaining by last week's year. So we're not going to get into it. It might sound a little similar, but the nakud is that milchama is when the naran, when the neshama lowers itself and encloses itself in the guf and the nefesh b'amis. When it comes to the levels of chaya, and when it comes to the levels of yechidah, which these are makifim, and therefore they don't lower themselves to the level of the nefesh b'amis, leishayach milchama. You can't have milchama. It's impossible to have milchama. So that's what he says in the beginning of the Maimer. He says what we learned earlier in last week's year. If you want to break it down into even further detail, that even in the level of chaya, when the nefesh elikis is at the level of chaya, so over there there's also a war. When is there shalom dafka in the level of yechidah? So that was going to take this all apart. This is a similar concept, the same idea of what Hashem told David HaMelech when David HaMelech wanted to build a Beis HaMikdash. They told him, no, you can't build a Beis HaMikdash. Why? Because dam l'roiv shafachta, you spilled a lot of blood, and somebody who spilled a lot of blood, he can't build a Beis HaMikdash, which is meant to bring out the opposite situation of peace and of harmony in the world. So therefore, Hine ben Neila Dechad, the Eibishter is telling David HaMelech, you will have a child, Hu yeh ish menucha, he will be a man of peace and tranquility. Hu yivne bais l'shmi, Dafka, your son, who won't have this situation of war in his lifetime. Dafka, he will build a Beis Hamikdash for the Eibishter. Elashafal became, but on the other hand, we see that Tavnis Hamikdash, the plans of the Beis Hamikdash, of what it's going to look like, Nasa L'Dei David, that was done by David HaMelech. Like it says in the pasuk, Miyad Hashem Alai Hiskil, that David was inspired by the Eibishter. He received an inspiration, a nevuah from the Eibishter, and based on the nevuah, he drew the plans for the Beis Hamikdash, what it's going to look like. And the pasuk continues, "V'yitin David l'Shlomo b'nais tavnis ha'ulam." And David HaMelech gave Shlomo HaMelech the plans for the ulam, how to build the Beis Hamikdash. So it's hard. So David doesn't understand what's going on over here. You can't have it both ways. The kivin Beis Hamikdash kosher and menucha v'shalom dafka, since the Beis Hamikdash is connected with the idea of peace and tranquility. Shalachein, like we just said, Nemar David le'yisiv nebayis l'shmi. You can't build a house for me because you're a man of war. So why were the preparations for the Beis Hamikdash done through David HaMelech, who was a man of war? Rebbe explains like this: when David lived in his Beis Hamikdash, when David HaMelech was awakened to build the Beis Hamikdash, and certainly later on when he already prepared the plans for the Beis Hamikdash, David was in a situation of tranquility. Like it says in the pasuk, the Eibishter gave him rest, gave him peace from all of his enemies around him. So now David HaMelech already had peace. And that's why he was able to build, to create, to draw the plans for the Beis Hamikdash, because he was in a situation of peace. But since how did David HaMelech achieve a condition of peace? It was dafka through the wars that he fought. So therefore, therefore the building of the Beis Hamikdash couldn't be through him, and it had to be dafka through Shlomo HaMelech, because Shlomo HaMelech was a ish menucha, a man of tranquility be'etzem, and that's the key to the understanding over here, that it was menucha be'etzem. It was menucha. It was essentially menucha. It wasn't circumstantially menucha, where David HaMelech was shaykh to an Indian of war just now after winning all of his battles. So now he had peace as a technical, relatively superficial circumstance, but rather the Beis Hamikdash had to be built by somebody who is be'etzem menucha, a person to whom war is not shaykh. It's not possible that there should be war. And that wasn't David HaMelech, that was Shlomo HaMelech. Okay? So what the Rebbe is making over here is this concept that you have something that's there on a technical level, and you have something that's there on an essential level. Right? If we try to understand it a little bit, we could give a muscle of somebody. You have different people, different personalities, the way they're born, the way they're created. Some people are created with a more nervous and less self-confident personality. Right? They have more anxiety and more stress. And some people are born with a nature where they're completely self-confident.
It also depends on childhood.
It depends on childhood.
Big influence of childhood.
Definitely, but it's Befeder says in Torah that a person's characteristics come from birth. The way he's raised will influence if they're developed, how much they're developed, if the not good ones, if the negative ones are controlled and corrected. But a person's basic makeup, you have in the Chassidus, it always talks about things that come through Aveda, things that come because the person worked on himself, and things that come because that's the person's natural state. So,
Also, because could be influences because we hear just very important word. We keep coming back in order to correct mistakes.
Right. Yeah. So there's those things. I don't know. I don't know how those.
Yeah.
I don't know how those things work.
Okay, but
I'm going to talk more on the parts that we could perceive as a human being, the parts that we see clearly. So you have somebody who, by nature, is self-confident and relaxed, and gives off, he creates an atmosphere of calmness and happiness. Then you have another person who's very nervous everything in him. There's always, the water is always churning. He's worried about this, and he's uncomfortable here. What happens if a person works on himself? Right, this person who has a lack of self-confidence and suffers from anxiety. So he works on himself to teach himself to not fall into it. And slowly but surely, he's able to bring himself to a situation where he doesn't suffer anymore from the ill effects of it. He teaches himself self-confidence. He teaches himself not to get anxious about things, not to worry about things, to have more trust, whatever it is that he taught himself. But now he's more calm. If we take these two people, the person who was born like that and the person who got there because he worked on himself, it's not the same thing at all. On the outside, it looks like it's the same thing. They're both calm. But if you put them into a stressful situation, so the person who worked on it, he'll start right away feeling the voices coming up in his head and he has to fight it. And he's definitely not in a situation where he can make other people calm, where he could give calmness to other people. Mashenkin, the person who's be'etzim calm, he doesn't even feel all of those pressures. They don't even approach him. They don't even come to him. Because he's calm be'etzim. He's the source of calmness. Calmness comes from within him. And it spreads to the outside, and that's why nothing bothers him. The other person, he's a source of turmoil. Nervous, he put up this wall around him to give himself calmness. But the second things start knocking on the wall, the barbarians are at the gate. We have to protect ourselves. We have to call the army. We have to say, I need to take a break right now. I can't go to the place that I wanted to go because I'm feeling unsteady, unstable right now. I need to find equilibrium. I need to all the lashonos over there. But I need to find my space right now. The person who's be'etzim calm never has to do that. There's like a wellspring of calmness that just comes out from him, natural. And no matter what's going on around him, not only that he doesn't fall into it, he spreads calmness around him. So that's the idea that Deb is saying over here, that there's a matzav of menucha as a technicality, because David HaMelech won the war, and there's a matzav of menucha be'etzim. The Beis HaMikdash had to be built dafka through somebody who was at the level of menucha be'etzim. David HaMelech was able to make the plans because b'poel mamish he was in a situation of menucha, but that doesn't make him a person of menucha be'etzim. So the Rebbe says, going back to the ideas of this Maimon, which is the idea of the Shalom that comes at the level of v'chol v'avcha v'chol nafshcha v'chol moedcha. So when we're talking about the level of Chaya, when the person's take it for Ratzim, to likus, doesn't allow the Nefesh Habahamis to speak, and therefore the Nefesh Habahamis doesn't wage war against him. So that's like the Menucha of David after he won the wars. And the Rebbe explains, when we're talking about the levels of Neran, of the Neshama, which they correspond to the Seichel, and they lower themselves into the Guf and into the Nefesh Habahamis to their level, since the Nefesh Elokis affects the Nefesh Habahamis in an Eifen, that it has to enclose itself and lower itself to its level and deal with it. The Nefesh Habahamis have to have the Dvarim Gashmi, which the Nefesh Habahamis, its understanding is in the goodness of the physical world. The Nefesh Elokis misaseka sima, and the Nefesh Elokis works with it levar lahatev delikus, to explain to it in terms that it can understand the goodness of Elikus. So over here, there's a ongoing war, an actual war going on, because the Nefesh Habahamis is constantly fighting back and saying, I have other ideas of what's good in the world, and you constantly have to convince it and keep it on the straight and narrow. So this is an ongoing war. You understand, Rami?
Yeah.
When the Nefesh Elokis changes the person, because he explains to him, he says, I know that you like this. I know that this is fun. I know that this is exciting. I know that this tastes good. I know that this gives you covet, all of the good things that the Nefesh Habahamis wants. The Nefesh Elokis comes and says, I get what you're saying, but I have a different program for you. And this program is a better program. This program is called being connected to the Eibishter, serving the Eibishter, living with the Eibishter, feeling the Eibishter,
Doing the job.
doing the job. The Nefesh Elokis comes to the job. So he tells him, I have a different proposal. I have a different plan for you. So he could get him to join. He could get the person, on board. He could get the Nefesh Bahamis on board. But every moment, every day, he has to continue fighting back and forth. Not only every day, every moment, literally. The Nefesh Bahamis is still fighting with him because he has his own agenda. Mashenke when the person is working on the level of Chaya, Kiven Shapul also the Nefesh Bahamis Lebe, Derech Islab Shesalish Mitzad Gilu take a Feratzen, Lelikus Nefesh Elokis Spatlin Bemiller, it's Nefesh Bahamis. Since over here, what does the neshama do? The neshama reveals its overwhelming desire to be connected to the Eibishter and Tolikus only. So the Ritzenis, the Nefesh Bahamis are bottle on their own, the Derech Memele. And therefore, there's no Mulchama going on of B'chlolus, hu inyan shel menucha. And in general, this is the idea of calm, of peace, because the Nefesh Bahamis has nothing to answer. The Nefesh can't say anything over here. But this is not the menucha be'etzem. It's only because the ratzon of the Nefesh Elokis is standing in such a strong state. Excuse me. Similar to the menucha in the times of David after the Eibishter gave him peace from all of his enemies around him. That his menucha was because he was victorious in all of his wars. But what is there after? What happens when you're talking about not the level of Naran of Tam Vadas, not the level of Chaya of Ratzin? When the bittul of the Ritzenis Nefesh Bahamis the Gilei Yechida, it's through the Gilei of Yechida. So it's not shot that through by the Gilui of Yechida there once were Ritzenis, and now the Ritzenis become bottle. That's not the story. That's not what happens over here. It's at the level of Yechida in the first place. There's no room for this concept, for this idea of a desire to something that's foreign to the Eibishter. And therefore, this is bedugmas hamenucha de Shleima. This is like the peace and tranquility that existed in the times of Shleima. Because Shleima Melech was Shleima Melech, because he was he brought with him such a revelation of Elikus. So b'derech memela, wherever he is, there's no war. So what do we have over here? We have over here that was is Pshat Shalom. Podah Bsholom. When we say Shalom, what's Pshat Shalom? Shalom is Pshat Menucha Be'etzem. Shalom is Pshat Shalom Be'etzem. In the beginning, what were we saying? In Eis Gimel, what were we saying is Pshat Shalom. Shalom is Pshat that we managed to get rid of the Lu'umazah. We got rid of the Lu'umazah. Over here, he's saying no. Shalom is in Dalit. He says Shalom is Betzem higher. Shalom is when you reveal such a tremendous Ava to the Eibishter within your heart. The Ava of Yechida, which is with a complete bittul to the Eibishter. It's Pshat Shalom is a higher level of connection to the Eibishter. And over here, he takes it even deeper. He says Pshat Shalom is when it's Menucha Be'etzem, when it's not shaykh that there should be a situation of war. It's not shaykh that there should be a Nefesh Bahamis. It's not shaykh to do an Aveda. It's not shaykh to be Nifrit Chas Shalom from the Eibishter. That's Pshat Shalom. So Shalom isn't only... Over here, we're changing the very definition of Shalom. Before, we were talking about Shalom as two different states. Either Shalom as the state of the lack, of not having a Lu'umazeh, or we spoke about Shalom as a state of the level of Ava of the Neshama. Over here, he's saying, no, what's Shalom? Shalom is a type of thing where it's impossible for there to be anything else. It's impossible for it to be war. And in terms of Aveda, in terms of a Yid in the service to the Eibishter, Shalom is Pshat, that it's not shaykh to have a taiva to something. It's not shaykh to have an interest in what the Nefesh Bahamis wants. Such a thing just doesn't, there's no room for it. It doesn't exist. Okay? And that's Menucha Be'etzem. Okay? And we're going to get back to this Nakuda in Zion. In Zion, we're going to see why it was so important for the Rebbe to make this nakuda that what's Pshat Shalom? Pshat Shalom is Shalom Be'etzim. Okay, so Vav is actually my favorite ois in the Maimer because
It's like you can call it pure shalom. It's a pure state.
it's not a pure state. It's
Shalom
it's
is-
it's 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 a reality. It's not a circumstance. Okay, Shalom is a reality of Shalom, that what is the world? The world is peace. Okay, before that, what were we saying? The world is a place where there are options. There could be war, there could be peace. Zelo mazeh. There could be war, there could be peace, and Shalom means that there is peace. What he's saying is no, that's not the true depth of Shalom. True Shalom means that there is no concept of war. It's as if the word war doesn't exist in the dictionary. The history of wars never happened. The idea of one side fighting against another side does not exist. That's what Shalom means. Not that it exists, but it's not ongoing. That it doesn't exist at all.
You can't say pure shalom. I mean,
If that word captures
I'm
it,
saying because you say it's wrong to say pure.
because I'm trying to say is that he's not. When you say pure, it's almost as if you're describing yet another level in Shalom. He's saying over here that it's something else entirely. Whereas before we were talking about a situation, now we're talking about a reality. What does the world look like? What exists and what does not exist? Before we were talking about what's the state of things. We didn't care if a situation of war could exist, as long as the state of things right now was peace, like David HaMelech. In the times of David HaMelech, the state of things was that there could be war. It's just that after he won his wars, so the Peil Mamish, there were no ongoing wars. But the world in the times of David HaMelech was a place where war exists. So he says that's not Shalom. Even if we made the choice to not have war, David HaMelech won all of his wars, so now there's no more war. It's still not Shalom. He says, for there to be the truth of Shalom, for it to be able to qualify as Shalom, it has to be a situation where there is no concept of war in the world. The concept of war is erased. It's like an idea that you never had. Try to think of an idea that doesn't exist. You can't. Yeah, sometimes you try to think of an idea that doesn't exist. What are you going to do? You're going to sit there and think, I'm trying to get to give me an idea that doesn't exist. You can't do it. It doesn't exist. Shalom's pshat that there is no concept of war. So it's a different reality that we're living in.
Thank you.
Okay.
Very, very clear.
Okay. והנה, על דרך זה הוא בעבודה שבדרך מלחמה שיש כבר כמה וכמה דרגות. על דרך זה, when it comes to the Aveda in a way of מלחמה, just like we finished describing at length the different levels in Shalom, so too, when it comes to Milchama, there's also different levels in Milchama. So it says like this, Da Milchama shebetfilah, when the Yid is standing and davening to the Eibishter, and he's waging war against his Nefesh Bahamas, like it says, Shas Tzleisa, Shas Krava, the time of davening is a time of war. Kivan shebeisat tefillah hu mufshat minyane ha'elam, v'is askus shalehi lisbenin minyane likus. When a person is davening, is he eating? He's not eating. Is he, busy? Is he going on vacation? Does he have anything to do with Elam Hazah? He's not. He's sitting with his talis and tefillin, looking at a siddur, in a shul, with a minion of Yidden around him. He just finished learning a Maimer, and he's thinking about the Maimer. And he's thinking about Pirush HaMilos according to Chassidus. So this person, he's completely mufshat. He undressed himself from all the concepts of Elam Hazeh. But it's still a situation of war because his isbonenus. So let's just finish what Deb says. And to awaken within him a love to the Eibishter and a fear of the Eibishter. That's what he's doing during davening. But the Ave and Yira that he's experiencing has to be a type that the Nefesh Bahamas could join the cause. Right? It's a Yesod in Chassidus. That in Chassidus, especially in Chassidus Chabad, it's a Yesod in Chassidus Chabad. That davening is to get the Nefesh Elikis all excited, it doesn't count. Al Teb is not happy with that. If a person gets his Nefesh Elikis all excited about the Eibishter, and he's standing and dancing on a Chat Malachim, the Al Teb is Bechlal not impressed. He doesn't. Nishtos is the Kavanah. That's not what the Eibishter needs. What the Eibishter needs is that the Nefesh Elikis should change the nefesh habahamis. That a likus should be felt in the tachtin, that a likus should be felt in the nefesh habahamis, and therefore, what's davening? Davening has to be where the nefesh halikis talks to the nefesh habahamis in a level that he can understand. But the person is bechlal mufshet from Gashmis. He's not dealing with Gashmis while he's doing this. And therefore he says this is like the lightest form of war. This is the easiest type of war. He doesn't even call it war. He says, Ein ze milchama mamish. It's not a milchama mamish. It's like the idea of a cherev shel shalom, where armed forces pass through the city, but they don't actually wage war. And then you have the next level up. Aveda b'derech milchama. The aveda neif milchama. He beikar b'shas achilo u'shtiya. Is beikar when a person is sitting and eating. Like it says, Nama pumcha belechol. When a person eats bread, he has to eat it on the edge of a sword. He has to hold his bread on a sword and eat it from the sword. What's the pshat over here? Because when a person is eating, it's considered a tremendous sakana because he could fall in at any moment into the taiva. So the person is over here, he's sitting and eating bread or eating steak and trinked wine, and he has to make sure that he doesn't fall into the taiva of it. And so too when a person is not in shul, the whole rest of the day, when he's busy dealing with his bodily needs, so that's called milchama. But that's not the ultimate. That's not hand-to-hand combat. That's not the ultimate level of milchama. However, ikar milchama, the main time of war in a person's life, when a person goes out to do business to earn a living, that's when the real war, the hand-to-hand combat is going on. Why? When it comes to the war of Achila, and so too in all of the other needs that the person has, so what is he trying to do? He's trying to make sure that his eating and taking care of his other physical needs should be l'shem shamayim and not and not in order to satiate and satisfy his own taiva. So what's his state of mind? While he's eating, he's fighting against the taiva. Yeah. What do you do by davening? Yeah. What do you tell a person by davening? You tell him forget about Ilam Haza. Yeah. Okay. When it comes to eating, what do you tell a person? Yeah, as man sitzt bei Verbringen. So say not essen, aber lieg nicht in them. Right? So maybe I can't tell you to daven the whole day. You also have to eat. You also have to take care of your needs. And sometimes, you know what? You also have to go on a vacation sometimes and exercise or whatever it is to keep yourself in a good state of mind. But we tell aber lieg nicht in them. Go and do it. Go and eat. But don't care about what the food tastes like. Don't care about any of it. So we see that he's not actually allowing for the nefesh habahamis to be what it wants. I have to use the nefesh habahamis to eat. You can't eat with your neshama. You have to eat physical food with a physical body, and that's the nefesh habahamis. So you have to go into his world, and the food has a taste, and sometimes it's even going to taste good. But you tell him, ignore all of that. It's famous that Hasidim are not mahadir in mitzvahs that involve hana for the guf. Right? That's why, eating on Shabbos, which is done with a grace shturim in many other groups of Yidden, by Shina and Shina b'Shabbos Tainug, we kind of, at least if we're going to live a Chassidish life, we kind of ignore those things. Yeah, we don't sleep on Shabbos. We sleep. Sleep means that we sleep from Nyanim of Chayil, and instead we learn Chassidus. That's the pshat sleep, and the eating. We're not mahadir to have. Everybody can have a very tasty Shabbos meal. But it's not a word of Chassidishkeit. We don't say, Shabbos is coming, and now we're going to have the best food. And Chassidim weren't mahadir in these mitzvahs. Yeah. It's also not. All of these mitzvahs, Chassidim weren't mahadir in it. Why? Because all of these things involve the nefesh habahamis. The nefesh habahamis is involved in it. And we're afraid, because we're not supposed to become zugekaltem what the nefesh habahamis does. So in all of these types of things, even though we're using the nefesh habahamis, but we tell the nefesh habahamis shvaig. In a word, men sagt the nefesh habahamis shvaig. Is noch einmal. During the time of davening, we're not interested in the nefesh habahamis at all. We're just trying to convince him of the nefesh halikis. We're busy with what the nefesh halikis wants, and we're just trying to convince the nefesh habahamis, but we're not interested in the nefesh habahamis at all. During achilu shtia and the other bodily needs, We are interested in the Nefesh Bahamis. We do things that the Nefesh Bahamis needs, but we tell him, Shvaik, be quiet. What happens when it comes to business, however? However, when it comes to business, when it comes to earning a living, it must be, according to Torah, in the even of his slapshus, like it says, Nasasav and Nasata be'emuna, did you deal in business faithfully? And the Rebbe is touching in a very interesting way. Nasasav and Nasata be'emuna, did you deal in business faithfully? As in, did you do good business? Did you do business v'sadar tzai? Nasasav and Nasata be'emuna is one of the things that they ask a person when his neshama reaches the best neshama maila. They ask him three things: tzipisa lishua. I think the other one is, did you make time? Nasasav and Nasata be'emuna. And I think the other one is, did you set time for learning? I think. No, I think is the other one. So how would you understand the Nasasav and Nasata be'emuna? Did you not cheat in business? Right? Did you do it honestly? The Rebbe over here teaches the different type of cheating. There's cheating the Eivishter. The Eivishter has over here a mitzvah. Sheishes Yomim Taveh, the Eivishter Befish wants you to do business. Did you do it faithfully, Klapi Shmaya? Because in the Nasasav and Nasata be'emuna, no, be'emuna, you have a contract with the Eivishter of Sheishes Yomim Taveh. And the Eivishter Befish doesn't want an Hagen Nisses. He doesn't want you to have money in an Eifen of a nest. Let the Eivishter give money to all the in an Eifen of a nest. But right now, it's not the Ratzon Elyon.
But you have to be in it.
So you have to. So in the Nasasav and Nasata means you have to. Who understands business? The Nefesh Elokis doesn't understand business. The Nefesh Bahamis understands business, and Torah requires you to not tell the Nefesh Bahamis shvaig, be quiet. In other words, what would it be telling Nefesh Bahamis shvaig? It would be like a person coming to business and saying, "I'm coming to business, and I know that all my money comes to the Eibishter, right? That the Eibishter is the one who gives you kech to make money. And I learned the Maimer via Daita Moscow, and I know that really all the Ashpahs come from the Eibishter and from the Eibishter exclusively. Nothing else has a thing. So I'm going to sit over here in business, and I'm going to think, was steht in Torah? What should I do in business?" He's doing an Aveda if he does that. Yeah. It's a good idea when somebody comes into business to open up a Tanya for 1 minute, to have a Pesoketa in Torah that reminds him that he should know that it's not about his business, and then give a few coins into tzedakah. But then he has to do business. He has that's what Torah demands of him. So he has to let the Nefesh Bahamis express itself. And still he has to do it also Yid. So this is the true Muhammad. This is hand-to-hand combat. You're using the Nefesh Bahamis, you're working with the Nefesh Bahamis, you're telling the Nefesh Bahamis, speak up. I want to know what you say. Ich will dir hören. Nicht schweig. I want to hear you. Don't be quiet. Speak up. And still you have to do that in an Eifen that is for the Eibishter. I'm going to skip the brackets. So according to this, it comes out that when the person is doing war during eating, so that's like doing war with a knife, with a sword. Like the Maimer Chazal. Even though that you can only wage battle with a sword when you get close to the enemy, which is the difference between doing battle with a sword versus with an arrow that you can still stand from a distance. Still, this closeness is only a proximity in place that they're standing next to each other, but they're not holding each other, they're not hugging each other. The Mulchama during business and during earning a livelihood is like the Mulchama which is called Krav, because you're close. It's not only in close proximity to the other idea, to the other side. The two warring sides hug each other, like in the way that people who wrestle with each other do. They grab onto each other and hold each other in order to throw them to the ground. So it comes out like this: that in Mulchama, there's also different levels, and guess what? We're required to do all of the levels. The Yid is required, to do the level of davening, where he's mushit for a moment in his day, for a davening in his day, he allows himself to not deal with the Nefesh Bahamis at all. He deals with the Nefesh Elokis. He brings it down to the level of Nefesh Bahamis, but he's not doing anything that the Nefesh Bahamis wants at this time. Right? When you're davening, it's not something the Nefesh Bahamis wants. You speak to him, but you're not doing what he wants. He's also required to eat, because that's what the Eibishter wants. And during that time, he is dealing with the Nefesh Bahamis. He's doing the things the Nefesh Bahamis wants to do. But he tells the Nefesh Bahamis, shvaik, Yeah, don't get excited. We're eating over here. I don't want. I'm not interested in what you like. Maybe I'll eat something else that I don't like. Whatever. And then there's the ultimate level of krav that the person has to do, which is he has to go into business. And over here, he has to allow his nefesh habahamis to speak up. He has to use his seichel of his nefesh habahamis to understand the ways of the world and to understand the ways to make money. And he has to do this, but to do it according to Torah and mitzvahs. And that's the ultimate battle. That's the ultimate war. And with this, finally, we can understand what's the pshat of Bsholom nafshi. What's a person supposed to do when he finds that he's not a mashpia, he's not a rav, he's not even a shliach, or even if he is a shliach, but he finds that he has to do avodas habirurim in an eifin of krav, in an eifin of battle. He has to go into business, wrestling.
Like this guy in the train. He had to wrestle with the guy. We didn't have Shabbat. He was holding him down. He was wrestling with him. Yeah,
Sure.
And he stands next to Trump.
So you have the situation where you have to wrestle. Maybe it's judo, whatever it is.
It's jiu-jitsu.
Jiu-jitsu. But he wants to be into Podah Bsholom. The Yid doesn't want to get into trouble. He wants it to be an eifin of peace. Shalom betachlis hashlemus kashalom shaya b'yimei shleima l'mayli yesed kashalom shaya lasid lava. It should be shalom to the ultimate level of shalom, just as the shalom in the times of Shlomo Melech, and even higher. It should be at the level of shalom that was lasid lava. How could a Yid possibly do this? And I'm going to say the answer outside, and you have to forgive me. I'm going to rush through the rest of the Maimer. I have to run, but it doesn't make sense to learn it next week. So what does the Yid do? If the Yid is going to come with his Tam Vadas, what's going to happen? He's going to get swallowed alive by the nefesh habahamis. He's not going to be able to. Because if you're lowering yourself to the world of the nefesh habahamis, and you're telling the nefesh habahamis, speak up, you're not going to have shalom. How are you going to have shalom? And the same thing is even if he comes with a level of ratzon where he decides that he wants to be connected to the Eibishter. To put it in a very pashto he is. You have a bacher in yeshiva. Yeah, all he knows about is learning Torah and doing mitzvahim and other things and basically bringing Mashiach. And then he gets married. There's a story in Look at the Deburim about this, where before a chassid left the Rebbe Marash, he was a yeshiva at the Rebbe Marash, he wanted some eitzes, because he knew he's leaving Lubavitch, he's leaving Kailu, and now he's going into the world, he's going to have to work, he didn't want to have an affiliate, he didn't want to fall down. So the bacher, he gets married, and then he's in Kailu, let's say, and now he has to go out into this world. And once he goes into the world, all of the ideas that he learned in yeshiva and all of the aveda that he did, it's going to muscle. Even if I would say it's even worse than that. After a few years earning a living, whether he's having difficulty earning a living or whether he's having success, they both present their own challenges, and they could both swallow him up. So what's a person supposed to do to save himself? And then this is the answer that we learned earlier in the Maimah, that there has to be menucha be'etzem. There has to be peace, essential peace. Where it's not shot that I chose peace. If I chose peace, you know what? After dealing with the nefesh habahamis for years and years and years, first of all, there's going to be constantly a bloody war. Peace, there's not going to be. And not only that, there's a risk that you might even lose the war. So what are you supposed to do? He says you have to reach deeper, to the level of menucha be'etzem. In other words, where a yid calls out the yechid within him. When a yid is living and is connected to this idea of yechid, which he explains in this Maimah is, as sekenish zayin anders. It's not pshat that I want to do mitzvahs. It's not pshat that my neshama is making me do mitzvahs. It's pshat if the Eibishter said it's impossible, it should be different. When a yid connects to that level, so he could find himself stuck deep in the ways of the world, and he's not touched. He's like that wellspring of peace that comes from within him, and he's always connected to the Eibishter because he's living on the level of shalom be'etzem. There is nothing else. On the level of Yechidah, there's only a likus. And no matter where I find myself, no matter if I'm doing business for decades, and I'm dealing with Goyim, and I'm dealing with Inyan Elam Hazeh, it doesn't touch me. Because by me, there is no other option. There's nothing else. There's only Shalom. There's only the Eibishter. And that's the way to go. Okay? So that's what he says over here. I'm going to finish the Maimah without touching much. Now, how could a person have Shalom even when he's doing krav, when he's doing business? He said he awakens the level of Yechida within him. Where every single Yid has within him the ability to awaken the Yechida within him. Now, there's a nasa Podah Bsholom nafshi shaladam evid. The person's soul has a Podah Bsholom, the Hagam she'esek minyan ye'elim b'chtei levanim b'efen shel krav, even though he has to lower himself to do hand-to-hand combat in Eifin of Krav within Yan Ye'elim, and Kol Kim Lein it he shouldn't get caught up in it and affected by it. And now the Rebbe adds one more point. V'yasedem is even furthermore Shigam P'diyas Hanitzaitzis, and this is a very tired and a kuda, but there's no time. The nitzaitzis that he schleps out from this depth of klippa and elam hazeh, he schleps them out and brings them to the high level of shalom. Even those nitzaitzis which were begalus b'rishas rabim to the pruda, nichlalim b'nishmas shel adam hamavarim, he includes them within his neshama, and not stam hoyimodi v'achem nichlalim b'yichidah shabay. He lifts them up. These nitzaitzis that were previously elam hazeh, he lifts them up to the level of Yechida within him. Good. We're going to stop here. The last day said, "Dan can learn on Alein."